I love this. What you're talking about is called direct language. Instead of saying, can you do this? Or do you want to do this? That implies wishy-washy, right? But when you say it's your turn or let's go practice our games and goals, you're speaking in a direct way. And by speaking directly to him, that exudes confidence that you know he can do it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Unspoken Words Podcast, a selective mutism podcast by the Smart Center, produced and published by New Edition Productions. This episode features our latest installment of our Shining Stars segment, where we sit down with former SM patients or their parents and discuss how they overcame selective mutism. Today, we meet Pushkar and Nicole Marathe, parents of TOYAM. Many of you may already be familiar with TOYAM's story. TOYAM's experience with selective mutism is the basis for the Smart Center's annual fundraiser dinner in partnership with Stage Kitchen and Bar in West Palm Beach, Florida, that benefits the Smart Center's SMRI, the Selective Mutism Research Institute. This episode is perfectly timed as the Smart Center is gearing up for their 4th annual fundraiser dinner on January 30th, 2025. We will have much more information on our website and on social media. The fundraiser dinner will feature an amazing evening, including a cocktail reception, a delicious 4-course dinner crafted by Chef Pushkar, TOYAM'S dad, and renowned guest chefs. You also get a chance to meet and greet with Dr. Lisa Schiphan-Blum and Dr. Jenna Blum from the Smart Center, have a chance to participate in a silent auction, and just meet and mingle with an amazing group of people down in Florida. In this particular podcast episode, Dr. E, Pushkar, and Nicole discuss TOYAM's unique SM journey, the importance of finding the right support for your child with SM, celebrating milestones, and much, much more. Before we get started, don't forget, if you have any questions on anything covered in today's episode, please head to selectivemutismcenter.org/ask Dr. E, that's ASK-DR-E, and enter your question. The Smart Center team reads all of your submissions, and we do our best to answer them on podcast episodes, blog posts, and on social media. Speaking of social media, don't forget to follow the podcast on YouTube and Instagram. On Instagram, we are at unspokenwords_podcast, and on YouTube, we are Unspoken Words Podcast by Dr. E. On both platforms, we post the best of every single episode, chapter cuts, social cuts, you name it. So without further ado, please enjoy the latest episode of the Unspoken Words Podcast.
Hey listeners, before we get started, I want to tell you about Communicamp, our 3+ day intensive group treatment and all-day parent education and support program designed to help parents, children, and teens overcome selective mutism, social anxiety, and extreme shyness. It's over 16 hours of parent education and support, as well as 16+ hours of treatment for your child or teen. Spaces are limited and spots book fast. To learn more, please find Communicamp in this episode's description or head to communicamp.org and complete our interest form, and our team will be in touch. Let's help your child or teen find their voice. Okay, now enjoy the episode. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Unspoken Words. This is our Shining Star episode, and I am super excited to have Nicole and Pushkar here today. How are you guys?
We're great, Dr. E. So good to see you.
It's always wonderful to see the both of you. It really is. You know, as I've said to you before and other families, the purpose of the Shining Star episodes are to share stories with other families and ultimately to provide hope. Hope that a child, a teen, an adult, in this case, your child, can indeed overcome SM and really become a more confident social communicator in all settings. And it gives people hope because I remember meeting you way back when.
It was
2017.
Really? I thought it was a little later than that. And I haven't seen him in a long, long time. But when I met him, you guys were really in a tough place. You remember how he presented all the way back? I know you do.
Yeah, I remember coming in to see you, Dr. E. It feels like a lifetime ago, but just seeing you and hearing that word hope is exactly what I feel like every time I see you, or I'm at the Communicamp, or you're in our restaurant. It's just an overwhelming good feeling that I have. I feel like you are like family to us now.
You know, I feel like that about you. I've seen such an evolution in your son, TOYAM, but also just knowing you all these years. So tell me, what made you seek treatment? What were you seeing with TOYAM way back when?
So it started back when he was 2. He was going to preschool twice a week, just a few hours in the morning, twice a week. The teacher had told me to get his hearing checked because she thought he spoke with marbles in his mouth. And so that's where it started. We went and got his hearing checked. His hearing was fine. They suggested doing speech therapy. Fast forward a year of speech therapy. The speech therapist, she mentioned to me that he had anxiety when she would walk him into the playroom when there was other children around. She said his palms were sweaty, and she was the one who mentioned selective mutism. She said, "Have you ever heard of selective mutism?" And we said, "No, I didn't, never even heard of it." And so from there, we started that journey of trying to find out someone who could help us because we knew something wasn't right. Another teacher told us he doesn't talk to children, and we went in the classroom to see him, and he was at home. He was always running around, excited, loud, singing, dancing. He loved to dance. He was the most outgoing child at home, still is. However, when we went in the classroom, they were doing some kind of presentation or lineup, and he was the kid who was trailing behind. And I thought, well, that's odd because I would have thought he would have been the leader. I think that was the point where I thought, we need to figure out what's wrong with him. Teacher said he's not speaking to any child, and she was trying to comfort me and saying, "Oh, it's normal. Kids go through this, or maybe he needs to go to school more because he was only going 3 days a week." And so from there, we tried to find several different doctors we took Toyam to. One said he's completely fine. He sits in, and this was a doctor that deals with kids with selective mutism. She said he sat in my office, he drank a cup of water, he's fine. So I thought, all right, well, we can't. She says that, so she's like, no, he's just like a normal kid. Fast forward, there was other centers that we were trying to reach out to. Pushkar was doing some research. He wanted more of a holistic way to try to help Toyam, and that's when he found you. And he's really the one that was doing the research.
Yeah, and also like when we went to a lot of places, what we found initially that because it's not like, I don't say mainstream, but something which is less known. Now we do know a lot about it through you because spending so much time at the community camp and visiting Smart Center. But before that, I think there is not enough information because even when I read people writing on these Facebook groups, initially when you find out, your world gets shaken up, and every third or fourth comment is, how do I get to community camp, or how do I get some help? Like, what are the ways to help my child? And all the moms and all the fathers, all the families are always so concerned because there is a lack of availability rather locally in different aspects, because everything is for ADHD or this or that, but when it comes to SM with all the other special requirements, there's not enough knowledge out there. And when someone finds their Dr. E or you, it becomes so much easier, and you start unfolding a lot of different things about it.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lot of misunderstanding on the diagnosis because it's called selective mutism. So many people focus so much on speaking, and you see this a lot on forums too. And for me, it can be really hard and frustrating because sometimes when I get on those forums, if a family says, "Oh, people are saying this or that," sometimes I'll take a look, and they're focusing so much on speaking without really understanding the child. And a lot of times they're reinforcing the mutism because they're pushing so much to speak when the child isn't ready to do that. They don't have the comfort. They don't have the engaging skills. The golden rules of comfort precedes communication and understanding why that child may be having difficulty communicating. I remember meeting Toyam, and he was very timid. So he had more of that timid presentation, but he also is a very highly sensitive guy. And so that sensitivity plays a really big role in how a lot of kids present in TOYAM. So how can we do strategies and interventions in settings that were overwhelming for him? We needed to really understand him, and we needed to understand his baseline comfort in settings. And once we started to understand him, then we were ready to develop a treatment plan. But I remember meeting you, and I remember, Dr. Jenna was there too, remember? That was
Yes.
back when she started grad school. So she was assisting me in that session as well. So we both met Toya.
Yeah, I mean, I remember meeting you, Dr. E, and within like 2 minutes, Toyin was speaking to you. You started playing this game with him, and I was like in shock. And then with Jenna, she was doing like hand over takeover with like a toy or something, and then there he was like outreaching, and it was just like a moment where I'm like, oh my god, like there is hope for Toyam, and that's where our journey started.
Yeah, it was about understanding him. So those beginning steps of really before we even started treatment, having those kind of questions and answers and really learning about him before he walked in the office. Because if we had just asked him questions or open-ended, thought-provoking questions, looking him straight in the eye in the beginning and so forth, and questions he wasn't as comfortable with, he would have just shut down. So we began with engaging activities, but I also remember he did really well with transitional strategy, shaping sounds into words in a really fun way where he was really interested in the topic, and he loved the general competition as well. And, sometimes not very hard. And that's what I want to tell families. If you're kind of going through this month after month and your child is still not making that progress, at least with the clinician, and then making the progress on the outside by what the clinician trained you on, then that's a problem to me, because from day one, you guys had goals to work on. So tell me, in terms of strategies and different interventions, what worked the best for you? Do you remember? I know the engaging is important, but what were some of the strategies and interventions that really hit home for you and Toya?
First off, Pushkar and I were very open minded about anything that we could do. We knew everything wasn't going to work, but I was willing to try everything. So, a reward system. This was something we set up where it was hard to get Toyam to just walk into the classroom. And I hear you say this over and over again, like it's hard for these kids to just step inside a classroom. Forget about speaking. We just start with, let's get him in the classroom. And he did. And for us, it was, cookies. At the end of the day, if you stay in the classroom or whatever, we reward you with a cookie. And here we are 6 years later, and Toyin gets in the car and he asks for his cookies.
So gets the cookie.
So that never ends.
That's so funny. Yeah, his goals were maybe different than someone else's, right? But we had to know what his particular challenges were and begin working on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was one strategy. Another big thing that we did, or I did, I would go in the classroom and I was working with the teacher. Once a week, I would go in on a Friday after school, and there was one other family that was willing to help Toyam. And this little girl, she was sweet as can be, and I would bring a game, whether it was Connect Four or whatever game it was, Candyland, I would bring it in, and the teacher would let me sit on the floor and try to navigate, not get him to talk, but just play a game with her. 30 minutes, we would sit on the floor once a week. I would do, choice questions, Toyam, it's your turn, things like that.
And even to date, Emma is still a friend of Toyam years later, and that became like a special relationship. It's easy to say that that's his first official like friend, where they're still connected and they go. Things have changed for both of them because they're both 9 and 10 years old now, and they go to Disney or Orlando doing things together. Have different, but they're still funny with each other, and so it became like a lifelong friendship for them.
I hope you're taking photos. You never know what could be going on in another like 10 to 15 years.
Right.
You never know. You've heard stories like this where
Right. First love.
First love, and they walk down the aisle together. So you never know.
But I think, a lot of the school-based accommodations that I helped put in place, consultations, the teachers were just like, amazing. And it was like staying on top of it. You can't just think, you do one school consultation, the teachers are going to like keep after it. They don't.
No, you're right. And that brings up something really important is that it's not just treating your child right in the clinical setting and training parents. And we saw this with our research that training schools is absolutely critical. And we recommend a kind of a beginning treatment where you first start in treatment, then you do the beginning school accommodation intervention kind of plan and training. And then as needed, like every maybe 8 weeks or so for 30 minutes or even, just to kind of touch base, what's working well, what's not working well. And for us, you did the monthly program. And I remember you were really good with this. One of the parts of that program is the SM School About form, where every single month you would have teachers fill out the School About form. It kind of shares about academics, how he's doing, starting, completing tasks, communication with peers one-on-one, teachers one-on-one, and in groups, small and large groups. And by learning what he's doing in the classroom, it's like a visual screenshot, right? You're kind of getting an overall view of then you can adapt treatment too to work on that. I know for us working on peers was really important. So play dates were important. Small groups in the room were important. And it wasn't just that, but how you ask questions, when you ask questions, where you ask questions, and really training the teacher. And thankfully, you had the ability to go into the classroom, which worked really well.
Right. I mean, without the teacher help, we wouldn't have been where we're at. It's definitely, I have to say, as a parent, it definitely feels awkward to keep emailing teachers, going in, making sure that accommodations are happening. But if you don't advocate for your child, nobody else is going to, especially when they're little, they don't know how to do that for themselves.
One of the things we tell families, because they often feel like you do, like I'm uncomfortable, and what you can always do is blame it on us. Our treatment professional really needs to know what's happening in school. Every month we need to see this, would be so appreciated, and even talking to the principal to have them direct it, but always blame us. Just say this is what they need. And if you get weekly updates, it's what our treatment provider needs. And that way it takes it off you because you're only giving the information from your treatment provider. And that helps some families. Writing an email without talking to the teachers sometimes helps parents too, and sending the attachment. It really does help so much. Without that information, definitely a challenge. So tell me about TOYAM in terms of his evolution. Tell me about TOYAM now in terms of what he's able to do. Because I mean, he's functioning, and it's all about functioning, right? He's doing very well.
Yeah, I mean, when he was 4, Pushkar had to carry him in the classroom. We would hand Toyam off to the teacher because he just didn't. And I know some kids don't want to go to school anyway, but that was how we started. And now the whole ride to school, he is like saying, "Are we going to be on time? Are we going to be on time?" Because he just loves school. It's just so different. The teachers say he is engaging. He is playing, they call it gaga ball on the playground. I don't know, maybe Brandon knows what that is. He has friends in school. He's like a different kid. I do have to say, he's still at home, he will act out, and he's just a typical kid in that sense, which we expect because, he does still hold it together all day, and he's an angel in the classroom, and he comes home and he'll, kick his shoes off and, not listen, or he gets that way. But for the most part, he's functioning. He's playing his cello in front of an audience. He does martial arts. He does riding. So he is able to communicate really with anyone now. It's definitely easier for him to talk to strangers. And I know I've listened, for your reasoning, than for someone who knew him when he was little who didn't speak.
Right.
Something we learned through it's about Toyam or any kid or any parent going through this is because a lot of times parents don't want to share what's going on in their families about their children to their relatives or school or friends. It's a mental condition, and you have to share this with everybody to be on board and to be on your team, because that's not to gain an empathy, to really gain other people, other parents and teachers confidence, and also gain a little bit where like everybody gets on your team to help, because we shared, we did get benefit. Not everybody's gonna be, because things get forgotten, but reminding every year, at least in the first few years of school, Nicole kind of made everything about TOYAM, putting it out there, and that has helped him immensely, because people knowing not to put them away, but not to expect a lot of things, and that may help him be comfortable around school parents and helped him gain confidence and not worrying about everyone being in his face.
Yeah, no, you definitely, it takes a village, right? We always say it takes a community village.
It does. And something that I always did was do the all about me form and give it into the teachers, and they sent it out to all the new parents, because it is so typical that a parent that doesn't know Toyam will say, "Hey Toyam, how are you?" And then he'll just like walk on by them, and he did used to do this. He doesn't anymore. But and then what happens, parents, they think your child is rude. You don't want that to happen. So I can just share a little story. When he was in first grade, and we did that all about me form, so the parents did know about Toyam and the teachers. And when it came to it, they called Storybook Character Day, or that Halloween party, and the kids all dress up in their characters, and Toyam was Jack from the Magic Tree House, and they have to come out and walk in front of all the parents, and then the microphone, they pass it down. And when Toyam took the microphone and said, "I'm Jack from the Magic Treehouse," a couple of the teachers teared up, and all the parents like cheered, because they were just so excited for us that he was able to do that. And now I know some kid, Toyam does have sensory processing, highly sensitive kids. So the clapping, we're okay doing that now. But when he was little, we were wondering why we would sing happy birthday and he would cry or scream or.
And the key is that he understands himself too, that he understands that when he's in a setting that's overwhelming, it might take him a while. I know you guys own a few restaurants, right? And I've seen you at the fundraiser, Stage fundraiser. And I remember when he was little, and we talked about the restaurant has a lot of action going on. That's not always an easy setting for him, but now he adjusts really well. I guess he desensitized himself to that environment, because it's certainly an up and up busy place.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the 3 L's, Dr. E, I live by them. There's 6 of them actually: loud, large, lots of people, right? And look, listen, and learn to your child. So I live by those. I think that everyone should.
No, you're absolutely right. The look, listen, and learn is so important. And it's amazing when you start to really look, listen, and learn at your child, and you start to figure out, wait, why is he shutting down? Or wow, he was able to progress really quickly in this environment. And I notice when I ask him a question like that's more open-ended, thought-provoking, that's harder for him. Where if I start sometimes with the direct question or knowing how to bridge up and down, it's really amazing how it all fits together, for sure. So his confidence, like you said, he's in all these different activities now and he's thriving. So I always was so happy that you had him in all these activities.
Right. We keep them busy, because I feel like getting out there and just whatever it is, going to the grocery store, having him ask for, a cookie at the counter, to get
Boy,
a
he
sprinkle.
loves his cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, if I ask him, "You want to go to Publix?" Okay, I'll go to Publix, because he knows, at least now, and it started out where I had to turn to him and say, "Toyam, would you want, sprinkles or chocolate chip?" And he would say it, and I would, look back and say, "Did you get that? Did you hear?" That's how it all started, Dr. E. And I still make like, "Well, I'm going to go grab the bananas. You go get your cookie." I just do it so authentically, and I just walk away, and he goes right up to the counter, and I, watch him, but he can do it by himself. So
I think what you just said is really important. Toyam, like many of our kids that we work with, is a timid child. Like the majority of kids do present with timidity, right? Not all, but many, many. And he's highly sensitive. That kind of double whammy right there. So even when they find their voice, and he clearly has, he's able to talk in every single setting. He gets up and I've seen him on the microphone. You've posted that on Instagram, and he spoke at the stage event last year during our fundraiser. He can talk, right? But because of that sensitive nature, because of his timid temperament, you've got to keep it moving. It's not as if, all right, a switch went off. He's verbal. He's found his voice. He's the most confident social communicator everywhere. We need to keep it oiled and moving because otherwise their tendency may be to pull back a little bit because of their temperament and things like that. So I'm really glad that you do continue that and kind of think of him as, I say, hands in the pocket, Band-Aid over the mouth. You still want him to be the handing the money, taking the money, because what the front line does, that social engagement, is it welcomes others to ask them questions. So as kids tend to kind of shadow and they are hanging out just because the parents are the ones doing it, right? So the kids kind of hang to the back sometimes. Others won't innately ask questions, and you want people to ask questions. You want them to say, hey, did you find everything okay at the store? Or, hey, can I help you? Or that, because it welcomes. And then the common questions. Oh, what are you guys doing over the holidays? And now he's on the front line. So he's going to be the person that's going to be answering that. And if there's a time that he looks at you because he doesn't know, you can jump in with a choice because maybe he doesn't realize all the things he's doing over the holidays and he needs your assistance.
I do feel like Dr. E, something else that helped so much was, he goes to a Montessori school. And so in a Montessori world, they're in circle time, they ask the children, would you like a turn reading? And Toyam would always say no. Of course. I mean, these kids will always say no, right? Try to get out of in any situation to try to talk. So I had to tell the teacher to say, Toyam, it's your turn. And this was something that, it was hard for them at first, but they realized, wow, it really does work when at least he's going to know every time. No, I'm not going to pick him first, but maybe second or third, or just saying it's your turn.
I love this. What you're talking about is called direct language. Instead of saying, can you do this? Or do you want to do this? That implies doubt. That implies wishy-washy, right? But when you say it's your turn, or let's go practice our games and goals, or let's invite a friend over for a get together, or hey, let's hand out this to their guests that are over. You're speaking in a direct way. And by speaking directly to him, that exudes confidence that he can do it. And that alone makes such a difference in treatment. And it's such a difference in their confidence because, hey, they want to feel you're confident in them. So I love that the teacher said, it's your turn. Now, you may need to start, like many of my kids have to start with what I call the train ride, where it might be the teacher and a buddy or two, and then you increase the train size of the people on the train to get up to a bigger group where you may be reading. That's something we need to do. We often chart that with some kids because speaking one-on-one or in a very small group can be there. That can work. But how do we get to a big group? Now he can do it. You don't have to think about the train ride. But I'm bringing this up to you because I love that the teacher did that and she exuded confidence. Hey, it's your turn. Not, can you do it?
Yeah, you can't ask. Even now, if I say, even now, if I ask him questions, he'll still say no. If we're at the dinner table and it's like, do you want to? It's like, no, it's your turn to do this. You have to keep it going.
I love the keep it going because just like questions and answers, when you said keep it going, I think of keep it going questions or KIG questions, I call it KIG questions. It's even, asking others to ask questions to your child. So if you go to it's the holiday time now, we can see with the Christmas tree and back and all that and the Santa chairs that you're sitting on. But when you go to family functions for the holidays or you're out and about with people that I tell families often, ask them to ask questions to your child. Now, in Toyam's case, he's verbal. You don't need to do it. Like he can answer questions. He can ask questions with all of these different family members. But for our listeners, it's a really great idea to have them ask questions. So the common questions, hey, how's school going? Who's your teacher? Are you doing any activities? some of the kids haven't seen some of these relatives for a year. And so that warm up time may be important, but also prepping them, the About My Child worksheet, but giving them, let's say, 3 to 5 questions to ask and have opportunities for some games to play and opportunities for the give take back forth questions, because sometimes the kids can go, hi, someone can say, hey, hi, how are you? The child goes, good. So they're verbal. But we want to teach the children to go, good, how are you? Copy back. And then also to maybe have an I am or an I just statement to say, I'm starting basketball in January, or we just got back from Aruba. And so we work with kids on how to expand conversation even when they become verbal. So for Toyam, he's able to do so much of this. But I feel like for all my episodes, when something comes up that reminds me, I need to kind of give the listeners lots of tidbits.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean,
Helps.
I remember after the first Communicamp, we came back and we made this little book. I still have it. And in there, we put a picture of mom on one page, a picture of dad and we chef, picture of the dog, picture of the cat. So he can bring these to the family functions. We still have it. I mean, he doesn't use it, but it was definitely a good tool.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, these things are great, and you always have these things in toolboxes to help them get comfortable, so you kind of know. Hey, listeners, we'll get back to the episode in a second. I want to tell you about Communicamp, our popular 3+ day intensive group treatment and all-day parent education and support program designed to help parents, children, and teens overcome selective mutism, social anxiety, and extreme shyness. Over 3+ action-packed days, your child or teen will engage in immersive activities guided by expert clinicians that build confidence and communication skills in a supportive, fun, and collaborative environment. Spaces are limited and spots book up fast. To learn more, please find Communicamp in this episode's description or head to communicamp.org and complete our interest form, and our team will be in touch. Let's help your child or teen find their voice at Communicamp. Let's get back to the episode. So, as far as like recommendations for parents, like if you have listeners here that are just learning about this, what would be recommendations you have for them or advice you have for them?
I mean, for one, when you feel like there's not any hope, that there is. And it's everything you say, it's not about speaking. It really is. You just want your child to be able to function. And so, what I want to say to the listeners is you have to keep doing whatever works, and not everything may work for your child because they're all different.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I was going to add. Every child is different, so don't compare one child you meet at community camp or you have other friends or child with the similar symptoms or the same problem. They're all very different children, and they all need, someone might be outgoing in certain settings, and someone might be like Toyam, who is timid and shuts down with a lot of people, or also highly sensitive, which is sensitive in terms of wearing his clothes with the tags, to sensitive to a lot of sound, sensitive to being hot or cold. So there is a lot of different ways and a lot of different requirements your child has. So that's something I personally experienced, and knowing about Toyam, like just trying different things, noting down, knowing your child, knowing what he needs or she needs is the most important thing you could do.
No, I love all this advice and really utilizing, like you said, the child's strengths as well and what he's good at. You really want to emphasize those because that's confidence builders, and really utilizing, your treatment provider to really help guide you and offer you that support. Because one of the things that stands out a lot to me with parents is you guys need the support. That's one of the things that I think connected us so well, is hopefully you always sensed is my understanding you and what you needed. And it's really important because you need support because you don't always understand, or you didn't back then. Now you do, and you're giving back in so many ways, but it's really helping support you so you have the confidence and the support to move on and know there's hope and seeing the positives and minimizing the negatives.
Correct. And something I want to add where like we had that big question in front of us is like, when someone says, oh, like you have selective mutism or ADHD or any sort of special needs or the condition your kids go through, everyone has this big question about medication. We had that question too. For parents to really, that's something case to case, they should always consult, say, with you being with us, and you also have not. I don't know if a lot of people know, like you have your doctor by trade before you even got into this, and knowing the medication and knowing your child and consulting with your therapist and the doctor is so important. And whether you go medication route or not, in our case we did, and it helped us with the right. So it's not like you take a pill, you wake up and you start feeling better. You still have to do a lot of this and more to get the most out of, because medicine is not curing it. It's just like it's a catalyst which is going to help speed up the process, but there's a lot of work you have to do to make your medication and the dosage successful.
That's true. And as I'm hearing you, I'm realizing I want to do a podcast with parents with medication, because I have one on medication, but I'd love to be able to talk with parents, because my experience with a lot of parents is two things happen. One, when we get these calls a lot, my child may go to Communicamp or come in for the individual intensive. Should we start them on meds before? And I'm like, why? How do I know that your child needs meds? I mean, there's the far majority, frankly, don't use medication, right? But when you do, you want to manage on as low as possible dosage, because it's not that more is better at all. In fact, more can be way worse and cause you to be intolerable to the medication. Lots and lots of side effects that can present as ADHD, overwhelming. And it's just like, no, meds aren't right for everyone at all. So, and when you do make that choice, which is usually based on the child's level of functioning or dysfunction, so to speak, and the challenges that they have. And you want to be really, really low and slow and really monitor that with clinical, so that if a child's making progress, you don't have to go up and up and up. That's not right. The other thing is that low is better to start super low. And most of the kids that, if they do need meds, it's on such a small amount of medication, because you are relying on the treatment, the psychological piece of this, because it is about lowering the anxiety to be able to do the strategies, do the interventions. And so your child will then see themselves making that progress without the fear in their belly, right? That sense of anxiety in their tummy and fear, and they'll be able to do more. And then, so yes, what you said is so true. When you're on meds, which is not going to be hopefully that long, right? You want to be able to do as much as you possibly can do, so that you can get those exposure opportunities as much as, I mean, look, exposures are critical, but those opportunities as much as possible to build those skills in those settings, because then your child sees themselves that way. They see themselves making the progress and doing it, which then builds on itself. It's interesting. During COVID, we were all locked down, and there were kids that we were treating that didn't do much, right? Like most of the world didn't, but there were families that still went out and they did the takeout, and they'd go to the grocery store, even if they had a mask on and the gloves in the beginning, if you remember, right? But they were doing things. They were meeting family and friends through FaceTime and interacting. Those children continued to make progress, but it was from those exposures, even during COVID, right? But the kids and families that were so locked down, they didn't do anything. Those kids were very stagnant, and some had regressions because they weren't having the exposure opportunity. So COVID was a tough time for so many families, but I only bring it up now because it just is more evidence that exposures are so critical, and how it really can affect your child's overall social communication skills and confidence. But this has been, really, 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 really great. It's been wonderful for our listeners to hear. And I love that you guys are giving back, not just sharing your story, because we have Toyam as a shining star. You're doing this, but your family has been so generous with the Toyam Marathe grant. And We do the yearly fundraiser at Stage. You want to talk about that, Pushkar?
Yeah, I mean, we have a restaurant in South Florida. We have multiple different restaurants. Where restaurants is a way where people kind of get together, eat together, and share their own stories on the table. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to tell our story and TOYAM'S story in a larger audience, not to just benefit or gain any sort of sympathy, but we wanted people to know what is SM, and there's no better cause for us, at least, because it's so close to our hearts. Every year you come in and you're there, you talk about SM has helped some of the other families who didn't really have the children in their families, but their relative or their someone's niece or nephew. Nicole and I, we're lucky to have an early intervention, but some parents find this when their kids are teenagers. So it's spreading awareness, raising funds for research is what our like really our goal is. And this will be our fourth year doing the dinner at Sarge. And every year we are growing, and we have raised lots of funds towards the research and also towards the families who can't afford the treatment. And I know you, Dr. E, are so generous in your own ways to help all these different families. So we're not going to stop here. We are going to make sure a lot of families get benefited. And we just want to make sure that what Nicole and I had to go through to find the therapy and find you. I think by doing this dinner, we're spreading awareness about if a child is not speaking to you, doesn't mean he's trying to be non-compliant or trying to be rude. Give those children their space and know more about them. It might be an SM or something else you don't know. So don't judge kids, especially the younger ones.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. This year, 2025, it's January 30th, 2025. My family will be coming down. Dr. Jenna and I will be speaking. We're super excited. I know some of the families at the Smart Center are going to come as well. And for families that aren't able to come, there's ways to donate. And just so people understand, the Selective Mutism Research Institute, which was founded quite a few years ago, was actually founded originally by a family that came to a selective mutism conference I gave in Ohio at the time, and the family was from Chicago. Just such a generous, wonderful family. And they brought their daughter to me, and the daughter had been in treatment for many years, and the child did so well relatively quickly. And the family said, "What can we do to help?" And I said, "Well, here's some brochures, pass them out." And they're like, "No, what can we really do?" And I said, "Well, obviously, the more research." And the family went, "Done. We're going to start a research institute." So SMRI was originally started by a family that I worked with, and we did the SCAT study. And we're presently helping and supporting doctoral trainees to do research. Like you said, there's different grants to help with lowered fees for Communicamp and things like that. And we lower them too through financial assistance and sliding fee scales, because we don't want families not to be able to attend for financial reasons. So there's lots of opportunities. And if there's researchers listening, clinicians listening, and you have studies that you're very passionate about, please reach out to us, because if that's a study that we can certainly help support in some sort of way, we certainly will. So the more funding we get, the more we can hire outside statisticians and researchers to help with this process. So this is wonderful. You guys have been amazing, SMRI, and your generosity in doing this amazing fundraiser at Stage. And yes, it's a fundraiser, but I just have to tell you, Stage is just so delicious. You have the most unbelievable restaurant, and you are such a genius chef. Oh, I'm going to make you blush, Pushkar, but I remember Nicole telling me that one morning you just kind of woke up and you were just like, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do," and blah, blah, blah. And you just put it together. I can't even make an omelet, Pushkar. So you have to understand, when I hear that you can come up with this in-depth recipe and it's just so incredible. Your restaurant is just one of our very favorite places to go in all of Florida. So I have to say that to our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I also want to tell listeners, while you're gonna be part of this amazing dinner, you're donating money for the amazing cause. You're gonna meet a lot of different parents, hear a lot of experiences, but at the same time, you're also gonna get an amazing dinner,
Yeah.
which is gonna be a one evening to remember. It's a win-win in all aspects, and I invite all the parents because it more the merrier. The weather right now in South Florida is better than anywhere in America. So that's the reason we live here. So come in and join us. The date is January 30th. The details are on Stage's website, SMRI's website. Buy your tickets, email us. Our emails are online. Email Dr. E. And if you can make it, like Dr. E mentioned, we would love your donations, and you could see how many smiling faces you find because of your donations. And just like it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to help the cause. It's something Dr. E started, and we all want to kind of chip in any which way where we could help so many more kids. And there's more research, meaning we could help these kids find their voices faster, because the research is such an important thing. We have to continue to build this research and continue to help SMRI.
No, that's all wonderful advice. And one thing we talked about as far as the research, the grants, but also the training, to be able to offer trainings to schools, to be able to really train teachers. And it's through all of this that that information gets out there, to be able to really understand SM as a social communication anxiety disorder, understanding the factors that contribute to the development and maintenance of SM, and understanding the stages these children are at to begin the treatment. It's not just treat to speak, treat to speak. It does not work if the child is not ready to speak. So it's about understanding the child, the parenting dynamics, educating the school, and knowing how to educate. So it's really an incredible situation. And one last advice, if you go to the fundraiser or even go to dinner at Stage, is do not eat for almost 24 hours in advance and wear elastic waistband.
Lovely. I love it. And and also a lot of times people have asked, is like, oh my God, Dr. E could run for the governor. She speaks so well, or run for being a president. You are inspiration within yourself, and we look up to you. So thank you for being such a good leader in this subject and kind of doing this for your own daughter a long time ago. And hence, you're an inspiration to Nicole and I and a lot of the parents to advocate for their child and many others who share the same stories.
Thank you so much. This has been just such a wonderful, uplifting podcast. And again, I love seeing the two of you. So thank you. Thank you. And I will see you in January.
Yes, Dr.
Thank you.
I mean, I know Pushkar's like, you want to go to another community camp? I'm like, yes, because you always learn something new. So I enjoy that part of community camp.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you guys are always on the panel, and Toyam comes and he leads the classroom and he works with the younger guys, and he does so well. And that's a confidence booster for him. So even though he's verbal, he's working on some other skills, right? We love seeing you at camp. So any camp, let us know.
He loves being a big shot role, like you always say.
Yeah, he loves it because he realizes how far he's come, right?
Right. So we'll be in the spring.
Awesome.
Also, thanks to your family, your kids who are all so passionately involved in making this happen. I know personally all your kids are so passionate and always available to any of these events, or even in community camp I've seen entire family handing out the pizzas, cleaning after people, doing the camp. So it is a family affair at this point. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. I love it. My kids were like, I feel like born into this because Sophie was the one that had this, right? So my other children and Brandon, they've been involved in my passion for almost 30 years, right? They only know from this, and luckily they're building their own careers, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see everyone and all the families that gather. Communicamp is just my very favorite thing, because you're educating, you're doing treatment, you're seeing the evolution over the course of a 3+ day weekend. It's just, you see the changes. You see the changes in parents from the morning to the afternoon, and sense of their hope and their knowledge. And by the end of the weekend, and the friendships you guys make with other parents. So I am excited you're going to come to another camp. I love how you talk on the panel too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
All right. Bye,
Take care.
Dr. E.
Bye. If you have questions on anything covered in this podcast episode, we want to answer them. Please head to selectivemutismcenter.org/ask-DRE, and we'll do our very best to answer them in upcoming podcast episodes, Smart Center newsletters, and on social media. Thank you.